My teacher became my secret crush overnight. I had no doubts. It was Mrs. Robson, although at first I thought it was just someone who looked a little like her. Curious, I walked over to the large stone pillars that clearly decorated the hotel, and the plant pots I was standing behind were also plastic. From this vantage point, I could see where Mrs. Robson was sitting, her slightly balding husband sitting across from her, leaning forward and saying something. It was clear from the smile on her face that she knew exactly what she was doing. From the way she was sitting at the tiny table next to the railing, I could see right out from under her short dress. I could also tell there was nothing under it at all. Mrs. Robson had been the object of all my fantasies in high school. Everything about her, even the way she smelled, was a turn-on. And it wasn't just me. All the other boys in our classes felt the same way. Of that I was pretty sure. I bet I'd shut myself in the school lounge at least 100 times thinking about her. And here she was sitting there, flaunting her body. Almost without thinking, I pulled out my phone and took 3 quick snapshots. It had been at least 3 years since I had last seen her. Graduation had passed with all the things a young person has to do to fit in and start working. That's exactly what I was doing in Reno. I had a meeting early in the day, interviewing for a job. In the coastal town where I grew up, there were almost 0 opportunities. I would either try to get a job at the local paper mill or get on a boat and head out into the ocean to try to catch something. I even worked part-time for a few weeks cutting up fish. But when I realized there wasn't enough soap on planet Earth to get the smell out, I quit that job. Earlier that day, a man stood up and shook my hand. "Welcome aboard," he said to me. That meant a solid paycheck, benefits. I was now part of the corporate world. 2 years of college had earned me an associate's degree, and all the frugality, saving, and hard work had paid off. And then, at the hotel and casino, I happened to look up. And there she was, Mrs. Barbara Robson, the object of all my fantasies. Her body was amazing. Large bust, thin waist, round buttocks, which until that moment I had only seen covered by fabric. Her brown hair with reddish highlights flowed down her shoulders. Her high cheekbones made her face perfect. But she was conservative. Not once did she give the appearance of noticing what she was doing to every young man in the class. Not the slightest hint that anything was going on. Society was extremely conservative, and Mrs. Robson was, after all, a schoolteacher. And now I was looking up at her. Her body, her legs open enough that anyone who looked in on her could see it. Her husband lowered his eyes and saw me looking at her. I'd seen him perhaps twice in my life, and both times from a distance. He smiled broadly. I suppose it was obvious I was watching. Then he leaned forward and whispered something to her. She turned slightly in her seat and showed her body even more. It was no more than 20 feet to where I was standing, and I didn't notice anything at all. When she looked up at me with a sly smile, I could see that it took her a moment. A surprised expression appeared on her face, and both hands went down to tuck up her hem. She said something to her husband, and he turned and looked at me. His face reflected discomfort. At that moment, I realized it all. Mrs. Robson was intentionally engaging in flirting, and she and her husband were enjoying it. I grinned to myself. It was fun and exciting. It's not every day a man gets to look at the body of a strange girl right in public, especially one he was willing to do anything for, and I mean anything, to get a glimpse of her just a couple years ago. Deciding that the short show was over, I went up to my room. Unable to contain myself, I pulled myself together, and in a matter of seconds I visualized the vision. The cell phone picture was tiny, but the image was clear. About 2 hours later, I found myself on the casino floor. There was a row of penny machines, and I sat down to fiddle with them. I quickly realized that if I hit the big button, it would cost $2.50, and that was way out of my budget, so I only played on 5 lines for a penny each. A couple times, obscure pictures would appear on the screen, and the machine would say, "Big win," and pay me out a quarter or 50 cents. Once it was a whole dollar, but my original $10 bill was eroding. Someone sat down next to me and I looked back. Mrs. Robson! There was a slight blush on her face. I must have gotten a little worked up myself. A familiar smell filled my nostrils. Dennis, I remember you from class. It's good to see you. Can I talk to you for a bit? She asked. Hi. Sure, how are you? I asked. Listen, I know you've saw that, so I'm just worried. You know I teach, and if something like that gets out to the school, I could lose my job. I opened my mouth to tell her that of course I wouldn't say anything, but then an evil thought crossed my mind. There was no way in hell I was going to get that chance. I know you did it on purpose, I told her. She blushed slightly. Why? I pushed a little harder. I really did have an edge. Is it for Jack? He enjoys it, and I guess I do too. We always go far away where no one knows us. Yeah, I've heard of that sort of thing, I grinned. You're not going to tell anyone, are you? She asked. Well, I guess not. I even liked it. A brief smile appeared on her face, and then the serious look returned. You took some pictures, didn't you? I didn't know she'd seen it, but apparently she had. Yeah. I need you to give them to me. Please? What's in it for me? I asked. I can give you some money. I don't need your money. I reached out and touched the button on my machine, winning 50 cents again. Then what do you need? Mrs. Robson seemed to pull herself together again. She stared at me intently. Why don't you come up to my room and show me around? I smirked. She stared at me for so long that I felt my face turn slightly red. You've got to be kidding me. You want me to put on a private show for you? Yeah, why not? If you want pictures. She didn't seem upset by my suggestion, and that cheered me up. You've already seen me, she said. That wasn't enough. I want to see everything. Mrs. Robson looked away for a moment, then sighed. If I do, you won't touch me? Just to watch? After a moment's hesitation, she answered. Yes, I'll just watch. And you'll delete the pictures? Of course I will. Just a minute. Please don't go. She got up and walked along the row of cars around the corner. I realized she was going to tell her husband and was very close to leaving. She came back a couple minutes later. Okay, let's go then. She stood and waited. Wow. Was she really going to do this? I held out the money and got a $6 receipt. We entered the elevator and pressed my floor button. She stood there without saying a word. At my room, I fiddled with my key card, finally opened the door, and stepped aside to let her into the room. She stopped in the middle of the room. It wasn't much, but it was all I could afford. I've never done anything like this before, Dennis. She turned to me. Would you like a drink? I asked, suddenly not knowing what to say. I had a bottle of wine. This isn't a date, Dennis. Get in that chair over there and sit there, okay? This was more like the Mrs. Robson I remembered. She was always bossing me around in class. I walked over and sat down. Where's your camera? She held out her hand. I reached into my pocket and handed her my phone. She opened it and quickly flipped through the pictures. I actually wanted to keep them because I had used the telephoto lens option on the last picture and it came out spectacular. God, she muttered, hitting the delete button. Then she threw the phone on the bed. She stood and looked at me. So? I asked. I half expected her to just walk away. She sighed. Her hands went up to her blouse and quickly undid the buttons. Sliding it, along with the soft vest off her shoulders, she put on a simple white bra. Then she looked at me, my mouth already open. Her hands went down and lifted the hem of her skirt. She hooked her thumbs over her hips and pulled her panties down, stepping out of them. Reaching down, she unfolded the skirt so that the clasp was in the front, unbuttoned it, and dropped it as well. Mrs. Robson stood naked, except for a white bra. How is it? She asked. Is this what you wanted? Yes, Can I see your... I pointed to her bra. She reached back and unclasped it, sliding it forward off her shoulders. I was surprised. Her breasts were not at all as big as they looked when she was wearing it. I realized there must have been about an inch of padding in there. She stood there looking at me, and I sat there looking at her. Neither of us said a word. God, you're beautiful. I finally managed myself. Well, is that enough? She asked. Why don't you turn around and bend over? I asked. My voice was trembling now. Her eyes widened. Yes, I smirked. God. She turned, leaned over, and looked at me. It was so hot it took my breath away. Mrs. Robson was showing me everything. I had to squeeze my cheeks together to keep from exploding. She stood up and turned around, one eyebrow raised, a sly look in her eyes. Let me use your phone, she said. Completely naked, without the slightest sign of concern. I nodded. I tried to look at everything at once. She picked up the phone, dialed a few numbers. Her gaze fell on me again, a soft smile playing on her lips. I struggled to keep from bringing my hands to my lap to cover the lump that had formed. Hi, honey. Yeah, I'm here in his room. Nothing yet. He just wanted to see me in exchange for pictures. Yes, I'm here. I've already seen it. He's sitting right here. I have no idea. He's still fully dressed. Jack, I know you know, but it's a lot more than... Are you sure, honey? I don't want anything to come between us. Okay. But remember, this is your idea. Okay. I think about an hour. I'll meet you in our room. I love you. She closed the phone and tossed it on the bed. Get up, Dennis. There was a hard note in her voice again. I stood up. We'll do it, she told me. She reached over and undid my belt, unbuckled my jeans, and pulled them down so fast it was almost unexpected. I managed to get my legs out of them and not fall over as she dragged me onto the bed. I ended up on my back, and Mrs. Robson climbed on top of me. Next, we had sex with her. When I calmed down, she looked down at my face. Then she lifted herself up and moved on top of me. For about 2 minutes, she lay on her side, breathing heavily. You're not so bad, she said with a quiet chuckle. Then she reached out and put her arm around my body again. It was amazing. I had just finished having sex with Mrs. Robson that I never could have even dreamed of. She was lying on her side again, one hand guiding my body with the other. Yay. Wow, she muttered. I grinned, feeling proud of myself. Jack has asked me several times if I would do this with someone else, but I've never done it. Sometimes we do things like you saw, and it makes him happy, she told me. It was fun, thanks, I told her. She giggled and sat down. I can't believe I just cheated on my husband with one of my students. Yeah, I haven't been with anyone but Jack since I went back to college. She laughed again. I remember you from class. You were always looking at me. Yeah, you're so beautiful. I couldn't help myself. Mrs. Robson reached out and ruffled my hair. You're going to get an A, okay? Then she burst into hysterics. I lay there while she quickly showered, got out and wiped herself down. She stood in front of me unclothed and unconcerned. Awesome! You're horny again, she said with a chuckle. I really didn't mind what she said. I still thought I'd like to have more sex with her, but she got dressed and left. I love you, I said quietly into the closed door. Much later, I came back downstairs and looked back. Mrs. Robson was coming down the escalator with her husband, holding hands. They walked over to a blackjack table and sat down. She was wearing a very low top and a short skirt. Beautiful. It crossed my mind to wonder if she was wearing panties, but then she looked over, saw me, and smiled broadly. Looking around, she saw that no one was paying attention to her and moved to her seat facing me, showing her body for a moment. It was very clearly visible that she had nothing under her skirt. Her husband looked in her direction and saw what she was doing, then turned and looked directly at me. He only grinned and reached for his cards. I watched as she too went back to the game. They both lost, and the dealer dealt the cards again. I wandered away. My thoughts whirled. I desperately wanted to be near Mrs. Robson again. The next morning, I was already on the plane back to the coast to pack up my few belongings, rent a van, and move. Life was now settling down in my new apartment in the country, as normal as it could be for a single man living in a crazy city like Reno. I go to casinos on the weekends and visit other casinos as well. I tell myself I go there to gamble. Maybe I'll meet someone, but that's not really true. Looking, always looking. I never saw Mrs. Robson again. As far as I know, she still teaches at that high school 700 long miles away. It was evil of me to get her to come to my room and undress in exchange for pictures. Why I did it, I don't know. It was an impulse. It also wasn't very nice of me, but I don't feel guilty about it. What happened was amazing. The only problem is that Mrs. Robson is my fantasy, and probably always will be. I'm still single, and no other woman satisfies me. Not yet, anyway. I'm not sure what I want in a woman. Maybe one who'll flash in public? Strangely, that idea doesn't excite me, but the thought of a woman doing that for me does. One that would date other men? I wouldn't want that for the world. But Mrs. Robson? A married woman? Married women are taboo to me, but with Mrs. Robson, it's kind of... right? I didn't make love to her. She just had sex with me. It was the most incredible thing that had ever happened to me. I've had a few others, but not many. None of them even came close. Maybe there just aren't others like her. It's been almost 10 years and she's still in my head every day. She must be well into her 40s. Maybe someday I'll come home and look back at my old high school. And most likely I won't. There's no point in meddling in her life. Whatever happened is just what happened. My life will never be the same. Looking around the casino, I noticed a well-dressed woman. She was about 10 to 12 years older than me. I sat down on the machine next to her and put down a 20. "Any luck?" I asked her. She looked at me and smiled. I saw the flash of a diamond on her finger, then realized it was on her right hand. The top of her breasts were visible in the slightly open throat of her blouse. "Not yet, no." "Did you find anything?" I saw her quickly look me over from head to toe. "Just getting started," I told her, meeting her eyes for a moment. She smiled again, one hand sliding up and lazily slicked back her hair. She reached out and touched the button. I grinned to myself. I wonder if this lady is wearing underwear. Who knows? The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you!